questions. I'm now going to move us across from local legislation to a slightly different environment, and that is the company or organization called Wesgro. And so I'm going to ask Karen and Janine to please come on board. I'm going to make Karen the presenter now so that she can take us through a very interesting presentation from our perspective as the food industry and how this organization could assist us. So I can see Janine. Thanks, Janine, for being with us. Karen, won't you switch your webcam on as well so that we can all be in the same place at the same time? And there we go. And we're looking forward to hearing from both of you. So they've got the coolest titles, people. I have to just tell you, I would like to have a title like this because I think it's just so cool. So first of all, we have Janine Botha, and she is a trade economist for special projects at the Wesgro IQ team. I told her before the presentation that I failed economics at varsity, and so she really needs to make sure I understand it. And so yeah, she's all things economy and economic risk. That's really what she's involved with, and she's spent a number of years working in London, working for some big names, including Goldman Sachs and Deutsche Bank. And then Karen is a strategic research and public affairs manager. Don't you think that's just the coolest thing? It just didn't fit in the webinar slot and it must like wrap around your business card like 3 times. And she's involved or has been educated in economic law. She's a lawyer. She's got an LLB, and she's involved with political science, philosophy, and economics. So she's got lots of letters after her name, as well as a very long title. And the two of them are going to be giving us an overview with regards to what's happening on the horizon as far as the South African food industry is concerned. Ladies, over to you. We're looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and so I'll kick off, and Janine will come in. As you've heard, my name is Karen, and together with my colleague Janine, we're going to give you a very brief overview of very complex issues. Hopefully, a little bit of it will stick, but you can always come back for us if you have any questions. Come back for more. So essentially, what we're going to be looking at is the food trade between South Africa, Western Cape, and the UK and Africa within the context of Brexit and the Continental Free Trade Agreement. So both of these are quite significant events that are both sort of some officially and some unofficially launched on the 1st of January. And so we just want to give an overview and look at some potential impacts that this could have. So starting off with Brexit. The impact of Brexit on South African trade. So essentially, there are 2 big differences that we need to look at here. So on the 1st of January, the UK left the EU single market and customs union. And what that means is that the UK is now the master and commander of their own trade policies. So for us, that means on the one hand, a different trade relationship, a different trade agreement. And on the other hand, we need to keep an eye on what this means in terms of greater policy shifts. So sort of on the immediate side, we have a new trade agreement with the UK now. It's basically the same as the EU agreement, because what the UK did was they took the existing agreements that the EU had and they rolled them over, they replicated them. Of course, there are a few small differences. So for us, there's some administrative differences, changes, and there are additional tariff rate quotas. And then, of course, there are some complications when it comes to value chains with goods coming from the EU. So the main aspects of this agreement are that essentially we have most of our goods are duty-free into the UK, but there are certain quotas of agricultural products where you have a volume up to a limit that goes in at a preference or duty-free, and then above that you pay a tariff. And so that stays the same. We have additional quotas now for the UK. The party members to the agreement are the same. It's basically the members of the South African Customs Union together with Mozambique. These were the original groupings with the EU agreement, and so it's the same with this agreement. Basically, a big thing to remember is that South Africa can actually never negotiate a a trade agreement about goods without SACU. So we negotiate as a bloc, and in this case, Mozambique joined. So the main thing to look at really is what is the difference in terms of our quota volumes. This was quite a tricky one when they were redoing the agreement, but they looked at historical trade and they just sort of decided on numbers looking at historical trade and a couple of other aspects. So if you look at frozen strawberries here, for instance, so for reference, you can see the EU quota for 2021, 415 tons of frozen strawberries can go into the EU duty-free. So if you think that the UK used to be part of that group, it's now 415 tons into the EU 27 and an additional 132 tons of frozen strawberries into the UK. And then you can see for various products, there are numbers like this. Some of them go up as the annually, and some of them stay the same. I think some of the biggest additions are wine, for instance, where we got about 70 million extra litres of wine into the UK market, duty-free. That's Janine's slide. So, and then basically, that's the main thing. So really, what we need to look at in terms of the other side of this is how the UK is now going to shift itself globally. And obviously, there are holdups at the border. There's hiccups at the border. Some of that is teething pains. Some of it, you know, the trade between the EU and the UK. Lots of people have never seen a customs form in their life. So there were going to be issues there, but there are also some deeper seated issues which will emerge in time. And then yeah, I'll look at the UK trade policy once Janine has spoken.
Okay. Thank you very much, Karen. From my side, mine's more of a kind of an overview of the numbers and the trade flows as opposed to the policy that Karen's touched on. And, you know, very briefly, just to kind of to contextualize the relationship that we do have with the UK, and trade relations between the UK and South Africa have traditionally been very, very strong. And the UK was South Africa's fourth largest export market last year in 2020, and we exported 67.5 billion rands worth of goods to the UK. And in turn, from an import perspective, also an important market for us, and was the 10th largest source market for South African imports in 2020 as well. And last year, South Africa certainly ran a trade surplus of about 40 billion rand with the UK last year, i.e. our exports were about 40 billion rands worth greater than products that we did import from the UK as well. What we can see from the table in terms of the type of products that we do export to the UK, dominated by metals. The first three you can see are metals, and they collectively account for a fair amount, close on 50%. It's about 47% of all exports to the UK last year were in the metal group. But after that, you know, and staying with the top 10, 4 out of the top 10 products were either agriculture or agri-processed. So that certainly just does, you know, it gives an indication of how important the food sector is in terms of relations with the UK. Just to also contextualize how trade has grown with the UK, South African and UK trade. Exports to the UK, South African exports to the UK in 2010 were 26.2 billion rand. 2020, there were 67.5 billion rand. So there's been a tremendous increase in trade flows between the two countries. Karen, if you could just move on to the next slide. Karen, you there?
Yep, I've moved.
Yeah, okay. Just to contextualize this, slide 11, this is the new arrangement that we have with the UK post-Brexit. This is just to give a snapshot of how large South Africa's trade is relative to other trading partners with the UK. And these numbers are from the Office of National Statistics. So this is from the UK side, and it literally is the trade flows between the two countries. So it really is significant. You know, and as you can see, South Africa accounts for the majority of those trade flows with the UK. Next one.
The Western Cape, we also have an incredibly strong relationship with the UK, and it certainly is a very important export market for us. In fact, it was the Western Cape's second largest export market last year, second only to the Netherlands. And Western Cape exports to the UK totaled 12.32 billion rands worth last year, and that's up from about 5 billion rand in 2010, so phenomenal growth as well. And we ran a trade surplus with the UK last year as well. In terms of traded products, what's important for us is also once again showing up the emphasis of food. 9 out of the 10 top traded products from the Western Cape into the UK were either agricultural or agri-processed. And importantly, if we look at those numbers as well, which I do show on the next slide, just in terms of the dominance of the agricultural sector in terms of exports from the Western Cape, our top 5 export products accounted for close on 50% of all exports to the UK in 2020. So it's a huge sector for us, and that's something which we try to, we need to emphasize, because not only for trade to, post-Brexit to the UK, but to the Western Cape, we have the capacity both from the EU, from a UK perspective, and certainly from the greater African continent, in terms of the infrastructure and capabilities and efficiency is in place to do more from the food space as well, though. So that's something which we do always look at. So it's fascinating, to see what kind of a dominance that food actually does have in terms of relations with our exports as well, though. And just in terms of what I wanted to add in terms of the export basket to the UK that we've seen, and it's not just specific to the Western Cape, it's also across the country. There's been a tremendous increase in kind of non-traditional agricultural exports to the UK. We've seen great growth in berries, particularly blueberries, and we've seen a tremendous growth in various citrus varieties, including mandarins and so forth as well. So we're seeing a more diverse group as well, and that's just as the consumer demand is changing on that side as well. Karen, if you could just move on to the next slide. Once again, it just places, it's also to contextualize the role that the red bars indicate the Western Cape's value of food exports to the UK over the time period relative to the South African food exports to the UK as well. And with the exception of 2019, we certainly have been, north of 75% of all of South Africa's food exports to the UK are sourced locally for us in the Western Cape as well, though. On to the next one. This one is really of significance and importance, since the UK has left the EU, and these are just our top export products to the UK. As we saw from the previous table, grapes are our dominant export to the UK, agricultural export. Apples also key, mandarins, like I said, and wine certainly speaks for itself. But what we need to look at in terms of post-Brexit, what are the trade arrangements with the UK and the EU, but we're focusing on the UK at this stage as well. And obviously it's very different if you are an EU country, a now EU country, an existing EU country, as they have, with their trade and cooperation agreement, they have certain rules and regulations in place as defined by the trade deal that was signed between the two parties towards the end of last year. South Africa in turn has the SACU plus relationship with the UK. But the ones that are really of interest for us from a competitive perspective are the likes of Chile, for grapes particularly, Chile, Egypt and Peru. And all of them have agreements with the UK. They're active at the moment as well. The clauses might be different, but certainly they have agreements with the UK, as we do as well, in place as well. Apples, South Africa is the second largest source market for apples. Accounted for close on 20% of imports in 2019. The interesting bit here is that the key non-EU competitors, as I mentioned earlier, New Zealand and Chile are two large source markets for apples into the UK. Chile has an agreement with the UK, but New Zealand doesn't at this point in time. And that's what we need to stress, because this is an evolving process as the UK strengthens relations and signs new trade strategies and agreements with countries around the world. Same thing for mandarins. a relatively new product. There's only data for the last 3 years, and South Africa has had incredible success in terms of penetrating the market. We're the largest source market, accounted for 37% of imports of the product in 2019. Our competitors stand to reason, mostly Southern Hemisphere countries, or warmer countries as well, Morocco, Peru, Israel, and Chile, and they certainly all have arrangements in place for the UK as well. Wine, we're not such a big player in that we are a player, but not such a large player in that market due to just the nature of global competition with wine as well. And key non-EU competitors include New Zealand, Australia, and Chile. And interestingly enough, only Chile has an agreement in place with the UK at this point in time as well. We obviously have had a change to our agreement with the UK post-Brexit, and that's, as Karen mentioned in the tariff rate quote as well, the TRQs earlier. Our next slide tells us more about what's up? There we go. Something which we've all seen, it's been very evident, and certainly in January we saw long queues of trucks trying to get through borders into the UK at Calais and all over the UK as well. The expectation certainly has, well, in theory, the UK will be able to export to the UK without tariffs and without quotas. The reality is, though, there are so many tariffs have come, and not tariffs, so many restrictions have come up, things which I think were largely expected, but the degree to which I think was unknown. All of a sudden, they've got restrictions which we haven't had in the past. UK firms exporting to the EU have got a whole myriad of logistical challenges and issues. We've got rules of origin challenges which are certainly coming to the fore. We've got customs holdups, and there we've got new VAT issues. We've got paperwork to be done. Stuff which they've never had to deal with before. This is over and above the movement of people, which is going to prove very challenging. We haven't addressed the services issue between the UK and the EU as well. So this whole process is really work in progress. And yes, the outline is in place in terms of the structure, in terms of TCA, but it really is, as they go along, they are kind of hitting teething problems. They are likely to be ironed out in the long term. But this is where the opportunities do lie, and we certainly are seeing the UK looking for. They're implementing various measures at the moment in terms of changing requirements. Yes, they can, as they're no longer beholden to complying with the EU's standards, and certainly from an agricultural perspective as well. So they are doing things they're changing some policy to actually have easier access to various sources of imports or various products as well, though. And one of the ones, and so the point to be made here is that there are likely to be challenges for a while for the UK in terms of trading with the EU and accessing food products and substances and agricultural products, which they have really had on tap in the past. But these certainly now are their challenges in terms of accessing them. And that's where the opportunity lies for us as well, or for other markets to actually step in and provide these foodstuffs to the UK. Just on to the next slide, just in terms of citrus. A couple of things about citrus. Citrus exports to the UK have really flourished over the last 10 years, phenomenally so. And South Africa is a huge supplier of oranges to the UK. As I mentioned earlier, we're the largest source of mandarins into the UK, and there certainly has been a tremendous growth in the exporting of citrus fruits to the UK. Just in terms of as I mentioned in the previous slide, how the UK is actually amending some policy. Mid-Jan, an unofficial announcement came out. It's yet to be made official. They certainly we're waiting on an official announcement. But word is that the UK is deregulating their citrus market. That's a big deal, and certainly does present a significant opportunity going forward for South African growers, as well as our competitors. That's important. It's not just specific to South Africa, it's specific to the world. And basically what it actually means is that if they were to do this, South Africans and other producers, our competitors, would no longer require a phytosanitary certificate for exporting these products to the UK. And that is really a big deal, because in the past we have had issues. There's it's a tricky one to get. There are always issues in terms of citrus black spot and so forth. So it really is quite a big hoop to jump through. So this really speeds up the process. So not having to comply with the phytosanitary standard is really beneficial to the producer, and it certainly will enhance citrus, has the ability to enhance citrus exports. And secondly, the expectation is that citrus exporters will be allowed to export as much as they want to the UK, you know, with the proviso though that there are seasonal tariffs, and assuming that there are no anti-dumping tariffs that come into play as well, if there's a flood of citrus on the market as well. So that really is good news for the citrus industry. So, you know, as I mentioned, other opportunities are likely to arise as this thing starts to bed down, but it really is very fluid at the moment, and we are likely to see a number of potential changes in terms of how the UK does deal with trading partners as well, though. Ryan, I think you're up next.
Thanks, Janine. Yeah, so the last word on Brexit basically being, it's quite clear that the UK is quite strongly pursuing a policy, almost of a Commonwealth policy, if you may. They are quite close to, they've negotiated, they're well into negotiations with Australia and New Zealand, immense negotiations with the USA. And I think just in terms of keeping an eye on things, it's quite important to keep an eye on the Australian New Zealand developments. They have very similar agricultural export baskets to us, and they also counter-seasonal with the EU, just like us. And Australia certainly has a bit of a problem with its China market at the moment, and so we'll definitely be keen to get into the UK alternative there for wine and for agricultural products. We're going to move on to the AFCFTA now, but Linda, I want to check, should we, how many minutes?
Yeah, we have like 2 minutes. I just think an interesting point, the whole phytosanitary thing, that seems like it might be a cold day in hell before that one really goes through, but it does almost sound incredulous. And then I think we should watch Chile, and the reason for saying that is because they just put a lot of emphasis and investment into their food safety requirements and their food safety structures, and we could be a little lagging when it comes to that. So yes, Corin, why don't you bring us home to land? That'll be great. Thank you.
Okay, in 2 minutes. Continental Free Trade Agreement is big. It's might look like it's failed to launch once or twice, but it's massive progress. We are seeing amazing progress. 3 things to keep in mind that are important. 1, it's an overarching agreement. It's not going to do away with the current regional economic groupings in Africa. We're going to keep trading as SADC as we are. What it's going to do, is open up the markets beyond SADC. We're going to be able to eliminate duties with East African community, with countries in East Africa and West Africa and North Africa. That's the short-term sort of ideal, is to break through beyond SADC. Another important thing is that tariffs are only one side of trade. This agreement has a very big focus on trade facilitation measures. So anything that is not a tariff, which makes it difficult to do business, getting across borders quickly, all of that will be addressed through trade facilitation measures, and also the fact that this agreement is big on the liberalization of services trade is also important in terms of easing trade of goods. I think the most important thing for me to say right now is that I think there's a bit of confusion as to what happened on the 1st of January. What happened was that, as with the rest of the world, the pandemic caused a bit of problems when you have 54 or 55 countries trying to negotiate a trade deal. So things did slow, but in December there was a decision made that they're not going to hold back countries that are ready to start trading from starting to trade, even though some of the pieces of the puzzle still need to be negotiated. So what's happening now is an interim agreement or interim arrangement whereby if some countries have made offers to other countries and they've accepted, then and they've got certain rules of origin and customs arrangements in place, then they can actually start trading. Our SARS has already published a new tariff book with a column for the AFCFTA. So there is progress. Hopefully by July this year there'll be more progress. But I think those are the most important things to focus on right now. Over to you, Janine.
I think, in the essence of time, we are sharing our presentations. So, if it's easier for us to call it a day, we're very happy to, because it's quite self-explanatory.
That's great, but I think there is one important question that was actually raised earlier during Penny's presentation, so I'm going to definitely ask that question. And it perhaps, it's not something that's specifically around the numbers, but it is something, again, that we need to take into consideration. From what you're saying, Cara and Janine, the numbers are in our favor. So the tax structures have been put in place. We obviously are already doing, significant exports further into Africa anyway. But what about the regulatory framework outside of tax and tariffs? Any notes or anything coming through in terms of, again, the phytosanitary requirements, the legal frameworks around food safety are already different, between many of the African countries. In some cases, they use our legal framework. In other cases, they have their own. Do you see food safety as potentially becoming a barrier to trade within the member states on our own continent?
I can add to that one.
You can go.
Basically, I'll go and I'll defer to the food safety regulators for that one. But certainly, it's going to be one of the biggest issues. I mean, there are going to be a lot of issues, but I think the harmonization of those regulations, we've been trying to SADC for a long time, and it's a long road ahead of us. I haven't seen any regulations per se yet, but I can find out, and I can defer to the people in government. Yeah, I might have that answer. But all I've seen so far is tariff related.
Yeah, that would be great, and I definitely will pose it to Penny a little bit later as well, because perhaps there's something from the Codex contact point, but perhaps moving closer and closer towards harmonization in principle, which is what obviously Codex was about. Might just help, because then at least we are singing off the same hymn book. Ladies, a last comment just from my side. It sounds like it's good news. So it's good to have some good news, considering how we've been talking about the economy. It's good to, and it seems like in my next life, perhaps I should plant mandarins, because it seems like that is definitely the crop that you need to have. So interesting to note the rules of origin. I mean, our Department of Agriculture is placing more and more emphasis on that, just for local products. So, the hoops that we're going to have to jump through from the UK perspective, I think you've emphasized that, which is very important, I think, for the food industry. Please don't go anywhere. We'd love to chat to you at the end. For those of you that need to drop off now, because you have another meeting at 12:30, and we are obviously